So there's a difference between a running back getting 10 or 12 carries a game and coming out and he's fresh and he can run hard. And we see, man, this guy runs hard and he really gets after people. But when you are the guy, especially now that Blake Corum's down, and you slog it 31 times and you're still getting it in the fourth quarter, and you're hitting a handful of guys, at least a handful of guys on the other side that are going to be NFL players. Like Penn State's got a good defense.
Yeah.
That's being a man.
Absolutely. I mean, the offensive line, Cade McNamara, all the receivers, Jim Harbaugh, Josh Gaddis, every single one of them should have a big bag of money that ends up on Hassan Haskins' doorstep. You know, whether it's that or a steak dinner, I don't know what's legal anymore, honestly. But I mean, they owe him
a new NIL deal for him.
Yeah, exactly. Jim can pass on his Lululemon NIL deal or something. Yeah, I mean, that guy put everybody on his back and said, "Hey, I'm going to do it today." And that's, like you said, you know, Penn State's secondary is the best part of their defense. I'd say their front seven is more their weak spot. It's still a team that has only given up. This was the second highest number of points that they've given up all season, I believe. And that's 21 points. It's a damn good defense. And so for them to say, hey, we're going to run the ball, we're going to run the ball, and to still have that success on 31 carries with, I thought that was going to be Donovan Edwards and Hassan Haskins 1-2 punch. They said, Hassan Haskins said, no, I can do it myself. So it was really, really impressive from Hassan Haskins to see what he was able to do. I mean, and the thing was that it wasn't just like the offensive line opened up unbelievable holes for him. He was fighting for all the yardage. I haven't been able to find how much yardage, yards after contact that he had, but it felt like it had to be half of the yards that he had. So really, really impressive performance by Haskins.
Yeah, and another impressive performance turned in by the two bookends on defense. I already have all sorts of people making comments and calling into the shows, both Ohio State fans and Michigan fans, saying this might be a major problem for C.J. Stroud in the Ohio State passing attack. Of course, there's a game against Maryland, we know, and that's to be taken seriously. But, Aiden Hutchinson, David Ajabo, they were all over the place. The pass rush was fierce.
Yeah, and honestly, looking back, I have to give a ton of credit to Sean Clifford for getting back up. I mean, he was on the ground all day long, 7 sacks, and the number of dropbacks he had where he was hurried or hit it felt like every play. It really did. And they didn't have a running game to complement anything that he was doing. So got to give him a ton of credit for just battling through that. But if you go back and look at the film, there were a lot of times where there were receivers open downfield, but Clifford did not feel comfortable sticking in that pocket for long at all. And he would end up scrambling or running or taking the sack or throwing, too early and the route wasn't open yet. So that's where I think Michigan's, those Ajabo and Hutchinson can get to C.J. Stroud possibly. With a young guy, he's obviously now had a full season under his belt, and he's looked pretty damn comfortable for the past, 6-7 weeks now. But if they can get pressure on Stroud, all of a sudden those routes aren't quite as open as he's seen in the past 6-7 weeks. That's where I think he can start interrupting, they can start interrupting things for Ohio State's offense. Now, they've gone against a George Karlaftis, and they were able to handle that quite easily. But I think there's a difference when you have it coming from both sides. And then there were multiple times against Penn State where it was like, pick your point. If you're the running back, you got a linebacker coming up the middle and Aiden Hutchinson coming off the edge that he's going to get there. Pick your poison. One of them is going to get to the quarterback. So if they can do that against Ohio State, that would be an interesting thing to see how Ohio State's offense will respond to that.
And again, not to continue to jump ahead 2 weeks, but the Stroud, somebody asked me the other night to compare Cade McNamara and CJ Stroud. And I said, Cade McNamara, yeah, game manager, all those things that you want to say about that. But against Michigan State, I saw him turn in a performance that I thought was, okay, this is Cade McNamara at his best. He's being pushed to his limit because the openings aren't there. The pass rush is in his face. He's having to anticipate throws. He's threading the needle. He's doing all those things, and it's being asked of him finally in this game, and he's doing it. I don't know if CJ Stroud can do that. Maybe he can, maybe he can't. It just seems like those guys are like 5 yards wide open all the time. It just seems like that's what he just tosses them out.
It is. I mean, I agree with that take where it's like, we don't know how good CJ Stroud is, because I think how many people could you plug in at quarterback for Ohio State and they'd probably be pretty damn successful, right? With what they've got going with the run game to start it. And then, I mean, you're right. It's just like those guys, you don't have to thread the needle ever. You know, every touchdown pass, it seems like it's a wide open pass. And so that's where, again, if Michigan can, and I don't know if they can, but if they can get pressure, if they can get some coverage on those guys, maybe that's the difference. In CJ Stroud, you know, maybe he stutters a couple times, maybe he makes some mistakes. We saw him do that early in the year when he was struggling a little bit. Obviously, he seemed to put it together, but yeah, I mean, and you look at what Ohio State has this weekend. If Cade McNamara can do what he did against Michigan State secondary, I want to know what CJ Stroud can do against Michigan State secondary. And those wide receivers, I mean, they could have 300-yard receiving, receivers on that day.
Yeah, and Purdue's Aiden O'Connell ripped him up for 536 through the air. Yep. And Talia Tagovailoa 350 last week. Some of that might have been a little bit more garbage time.